Horowitz and read his book, The Political Art of War, and I've been a huge fan ever since, so I'm just...
Well, I know you Minnesotans think it's summer here. Well, for a Californian like me, it's a little chilly. I came with the intention of warming it up. Conservatives on this campus, and the faculty on this campus, are as rare as unicorns. And that doesn't happen by accident. It happens because the faculty members who dominate the hiring process, and if this were another speech, or if you're curious, I can tell you how it's done, and the faculty organizations, the political life of professors at this university are what I call, you should pardon the expression, communists, or have the attitude of communists, which is that there's a party line, it's called political correctness, and that anybody who's outside the party line is indecent, and students shouldn't be allowed to come in contact with them. Most of the students in this liberal arts school here will never encounter an adult conservative in their 4 years at the college, which has immense consequences. The only students here who can get a decent education are conservative students, ironically, because they're always being tested in their ideas, and they will have access to outside sources which will show them, for the main part, how biased their instruction is. And even they will not be able to fully tell, because they're young people and they're supposed to be learning. There used to be a time when the university professors saw their mission as teaching students how to think. This is the only type of education that's proper in a democracy, not to tell them what to think. It's authoritarian, it's really totalitarian societies which tell students what to think and punish them. And you will be, if you're politically incorrect, you will be punished in many different ways here. Relatively benign compared to what, say, goes on in Iran or Cuba. But that's only because the left hasn't achieved power in this country, enough power to enforce its totalitarian views. Let me ask, how many people in this room are either conservatives or Republicans? Yeah, that's what I thought. We'll have a good time. But I like to know who I'm talking to so I can pitch my talk that way. There was a very wise philosopher. I suppose I'll mention his name, but it's Confucius. In my day, there used to be all these Confucius jokes, and actually he was a very wise man who said that in order to restore justice, you have to call things by their right names. Seems simple enough. But unfortunately, we live in a time where almost nothing is called by its right name. Take the word liberal. Now, what are liberals liberal about? I mean, I just told you have a totalitarian faculty here. That's the only way there could be almost no conservatives. Oh, is there students here? Is there any student here who can say that they had a conservative professor?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. What department?
Law school.
Law school. Well, that's rare enough. I've spoken with a lot of Minnesota schools. They're all the same. No, I've spoken at 400 schools. There's no difference. I always interview the students. What are liberals liberal about except sex, hard drugs, spending other people's money, coddling criminals, and expressing sympathies and actually actively helping our enemies, America's enemies? Okay. And this irritates me no end. Conservatives, Republicans, stop calling them liberals. They're actually communists, but you could call them leftists. I'd be happy with that. But don't call them liberals. What shuts down the debate is political correctness. Anybody know where political the term comes from? Okay, it was coined by a mass murderer named Mao Zedong, who killed 70 million people because they were politically incorrect, basically. That's its provenance. And that's the way it's used. There was a wit, who I don't know his name because he came in a comment on an article I wrote on the internet, so it was just whatever it is. I don't even know what you call it, his signature name was. It said, Republicans are always looking for the perfect candidate. Democrats are always looking for the perfect lie. Example, I'll give you one of the big lies of this campaign. There's a gender gap in income between men and women. Women only earn 22 cents on the dollar, or every dollar that a male earns with the same skills, same job experience. Total lie. Here, it's really simple. I gotta explain it to you in about 2 minutes, or 1 minute. If this, less, 20 seconds. If this were the case, every business person would fire all their male employees, hire women, and increase their profits 22%. It doesn't happen because it's not true. And the reason, I mean, as I guess it was Mark Twain who said that figures don't lie, but liars can figure. They get the statistic by adding up all the women and dividing it, aggregating their income, and then dividing it by the number of women, which doesn't tell you what the skill sets are, or what the time in the workforce is. And the entire difference between men and women comes because women seek flex time jobs like being librarians, so they can. Women have a big conflict when it comes to careers. They have children. Anyway, I don't want to go into all of this, but that's one. So they seek jobs that are lower paying in order to, I don't know, get to the top of engineering or to get to the top of the corporate ladder. You probably have to work 70 hours a week, something like that. It's crazy. Anyway, enough of that. So we live in a sea of lies about all kinds of things. Because if you challenge the lies, they don't argue the case. Because I just showed you, it's very easy to disprove. They just say, what, you're a sexist, or you're a homophobe, or you're a racist, or you're an Islamophobe. Never meet the arguments at all. One of Donald Trump's politically incorrect statements, and I'm not a big fan of the way he formulates things all the time, but this is just common sense, is we need a moratorium on Muslim immigration. Minneapolis needs a big moratorium on Muslim immigration until we can get a vetting system. We don't have a vetting system. We can't tell the difference between a law-abiding Muslim, say it's half of Muslims, so people that are not supportive of the jihad against us. Well, that leaves 750 million Muslims who are, who support it. How do we know? What's the vetting process? Do we really want to take in 100,000 or 200,000? We want to do what Germany has done to itself, which has destroyed its society by taking in 1 million. Anyway, it's common sense, but of course he's called a racist and so forth. It just shuts you down. 46% of the Democratic Party, you know, and I suppose when you saw the title of this talk, Treasons of the Democrats, it occurred to you I was going to talk about violating our espionage laws by having a private server for classified information, which I will. I mean, it's a sign of the sickness of our society that Hillary Clinton is not in jail. Or, better yet, giving nuclear weapons to our mortal enemies. I will talk about that, but I want to first talk about the betrayal of, well, it's many betrayals. Betrayal of Black America, betrayal of white America by the Democratic Party. 46% of Democrats support Black Lives Matter, which is a transparently racist movement who has declared war on our police forces, the result of which is an epidemic of violent crime whose victims are Black. In Ferguson, Missouri, and Baltimore, two of the epicenters of this movement, homicides have increased 60%, and all of the victims are going to be Black. You know, a statistic, I bet, I've never heard anybody use this. I mean, people talk about disproportionate crime rates among Blacks. But Blacks account for, Black males are 6% of the population. They commit 40% of the violent crimes. But 95% of their victims are Black. What the Democratic Party is doing is encouraging violence against Blacks. And law-abiding Blacks generally, but not always. It's really remarkable what's happened in the last year and a half. In Ferguson, Missouri, a lynch mob appeared, led by Black Lives Matter people, but to burn down the town, demanding that a white police officer be convicted and punished before any facts were known, because he was white. This is a racist lynch mob. That's what was in Ferguson. I didn't hear that. I heard actually some police use that phrase, but I didn't hear one Republican politician say, this is a bloody lynch mob, and it's being supported by Obama and the chief law enforcement officer of the land. And then when the facts became known, not only by the grand jury, but then investigated by Eric Holder's Justice Department, and found that the officer was in fact a victim of a vicious thug. That's who Michael Brown was, the hero of this movement. They still went around, hands up, don't shoot. Where does that phrase come from? It comes from the partner in crime, in that strong-arm robbery. That's the guy who came up and said, look at criminals lie. That's what they do. That's how this movement was launched. In my day, when I was a teenager, the symbol of the civil rights, why we needed civil rights in America, was Emmett Till, a 12-year-old who was murdered for allegedly whistling at a white woman. Now, the symbols are career criminals, the scum of the earth. Michael Brown was a thug. Freddie Gray was a predator. Nobody knows how Freddie Gray was killed. There was nobody in the van with him except another criminal, how he broke his, whatever he did, broke his spine. Yet there are 6 police officers, who are being lynched. 3 of them happen to be Black. It's just a nightmare what's happened to this country. These kids go out at the University of Missouri to shut down the school, screaming white supremacy, at a school where the president of the student body is Black. The student body is way majority white, but the president of the student body is Black. The vice president of the student body is Black. The leader of the lynch mob, and they got the head of the university system in Missouri, not just that campus. His father is a railroad executive who makes $7 million a year or something, the same amount of money. privileged. These are all privileged. And the reason that they're going around like this is because they're being encouraged. Because we have a society where, unfortunately, Republicans and conservatives who should be fighting this up front are intimidated. They don't want to be politically incorrect. They don't want to take the wounds that you have to take if you're going to win the war. Those of you who are familiar with my writings know that recognizing that the Democrats, for them, politics is war conducted by other means. Why aren't Republicans responding in kind? You know, my one wish is that Republicans would fight the Democrats the way they fight each other. Not even, I mean, what is more, Jeb Bush has spent $20-odd million to malign the character of Marco Rubio. Would that he have done that? He had Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders in his ass. I think he would have gone up in the polls if he had done that. It's okay. Let me just say, since we have students here, anybody who uses the phrase white supremacist America is either a moron or a racist, and probably both. In 1958, well, first of all, sociologists measured the key index for assimilating an ethnic or a racial group into a society is the attitude, the general attitude towards intermarriage. In 1958, 4% of Americans approved black-white marriages. Today, 87%. You just flip on your tube and you see ads in which there are black and white couples. And it's black males and white women and white males and black women. As you know, I mean, corporate advertisers are not the bravest people in the world. I mean, they want to appeal to as many people as they can to sell their product. Even slavery is so misrepresented. America inherited a system of slavery from the British. Within one generation, we abolished slavery at a cost of 600,000 American lives, but 350,000 on the Union side. Slavery existed in all countries for 3,000 years and was never condemned morally. Not by Aristotle, not by the Christian church, not by Judaism, over 3,000 years, until in the 18th century, white Christian males, and not by blacks either, white Christian males declared it immoral. And then within a generation, because America was founded, of course, with the famous Declaration of Independence, assertion that all men are created equal and endowed with rights that can't be taken away. Slavery existed in Africa for 1,000 years before a white person ever set foot there, and it still exists in Africa. Every black in this country is privileged to have been born in this country, even though their ancestors suffered a great injustice by being dragged here in chains. Why isn't this, well, of course, this is not taught in our schools at all. Actually, I first gained my notoriety by leading a campaign against reparations paid now to people who were never slaves, who were not even the children of slaves, and paid by people who weren't even here when slavery existed. I mean, if there should be reparations, it should have been from the Confederate government, but we crushed them. So just our whole framework has been so warped by the left that I'm thrilled that there are still so many people in America who will defend its values. Hillary. just having, this is the most embarrassing part of my own autobiography, but when I was a young, foolish young man on the left, I edited the largest magazine of the left at the time, Ramparts. And one day, a defector, an American, who defected from the NSA program, which was top secret and nobody knew about the NSA, which is our electronic intelligence. He walked in, well actually he dropped over the transom a paper in which he described, he had been stationed in Turkey. He described the NSA operation, which was secret at the time. And one of the members of our staff had been in the 82nd Airborne, even though he was a total communist. And he was shaking when he read the paper because the code words were in there. So I had 4 children at the time, and I was thrilled to learn that there's this intelligence agency that can tell you when every Russian pilot takes off, or every tank commander, and where they're going, because they intercept their electronic communications. I was stupid enough not to realize that if we published this, the Russians would know and they would change the codes. But I had 4 children and I didn't want to go to jail, even though I, like every progressive, wanted America to lose the Cold War. Every progressive feels that an American defeat is a victory for mankind. You have to understand that. Conservatives don't understand that. We're not up against, I mean, you know, these phrases all mean something. Secular progressives, secular humanists. Why would a secular humanist identify with our enemies? You can't explain it that way. Communists would be much better, which is why I use the term. I've written a whole book on progressives, called Progressives, to explain it. And I will try to, I better watch the time here and conclude this. Okay, so I called the Ellsberg defense team to get a lawyer. And it was a constitutional law professor from Harvard, and he advised me how to get away with committing treason. That's basically what he did. And he said, David, you have to understand that the espionage laws were written to refer specifically to documents. If you take a classified document, which these code words would be, out of the government secure offices, you are violating, it's a 1918 Espionage Act. Obviously, that translates into digital. Can't take digital things out. Why Hillary did. And when we held our press conference, there was, one of the reporters was thankfully working for the United States, and asked us if, you know, could he see that, did we have a document? But we knew to say no. So I know in my bones, the minute it was revealed that Hillary had a private server, she should go to jail. That's that simple, or she should be indicted. Let alone what she had on her. Let alone that they had this Clinton Foundation. I mean, it's a system of bribes. Was she Secretary of State and collecting money from foreign governments? Come on. You want to see how bad off we are. But that is dwarfed by our president. Barack Obama comes from the identical background I did. He was raised by communists. He grew up in the communist movement. He, which then called itself a new left. But as I've written that way, showed itself that it's not, it wasn't a new left at all. It was still identifying with every anti-American on the face of the earth. But as somebody who was in that movement, if you realize, you wake up one day and you realize that you are involved in an evil movement, which is lying every other word. Well, he makes Bill Clinton look like a Boy Scout. He is such a liar, such a brazen liar. And you have to be if you're other, because you can't say to people, well, yeah, I would like to. Well, I did say I'm going to fundamentally transform America, but that's still ambivalent. and create a communist paradise. You say that, and I think our enemies are right, which he has shown over time anyway. I can't go through all the things. You're all familiar with all of his betrayals. I mean, every time there's an atrocity where ISIS slaughters 200,000 Christians, he said, well, Christians, remember the Crusades. Oh, but forget the 1,000 years of Islamic imperialism and slaughter. I mean, Islam has been spread by the sword. It's the only religion like that. Of course it's problematic. You know, it goes without saying that there are decent Muslims, but Islam is not a decent religion. Historically. It's got blood on every one of its borders. Anyway, the Iran deal. If Franklin Roosevelt gave a nuclear weapon to Adolf Hitler, what would we call it? We have a traitor for a president. And nobody, I mean, if you say it, you'd be roasted alive. I mean, I have the privilege of not being a politician. So I'm not, but people need to be saying the obvious. Okay, I'm going to take 2 minutes to try to explain how is it that Americans, I was always asked this on the left, are you being funded by the Russians? No, we get funded by Washington. Leftists. How do Americans, when you look at this country and see the opportunity and see, you know, I can't even think that these people who are saying white supremacist America believe what they're saying. How can you know, support the enemies of this country? And it's really simple. If you have this vision, well, just think of all the intellectuals and progressives. All progressives supported Stalin, who, after Mao, was the biggest mass murderer in human history. Nobel Prize winners in literature and science. How did they do it? Why did they do it? They did it because they thought that Russia, and they traveled to Russia, and they could see the fact, of course they blamed all the bad things on the West. But still, what they believed was that the future, the glorious future, where everybody's equal and everybody's taken care of. They called it socialism or communism, social justice. It's all the same. You have this idea of the glorious future. There was an embryo in Russia, and they were defending the embryo so that it could grow. This is sappy, but unfortunately, millions and hundreds of millions of people believe it. Once you believe in this imaginary future as some kind of reality, then you will easily betray this country. Because no real country can live up to this ideal. Thank you. I'd like to be really good so that you can have a question and answer period. I know we don't have enough. You can always contact us in our office. But I'd like the students here to get this black skin privilege pamphlet. Just to, when you're dosed with the white supremacy lecture and the white skin privileges, how absurd is it? I mean, at this university, if you're black, you can get in with probably 100, 200 points lower on SATs, certainly than the Asian students, probably the white students, and so forth. That's a privilege. If you're black, you can get away with racism. You can get away with forming lynch mobs, and nobody will call you to account. You can be Will Smith, worth $240 million that white America has given him. He's a talented, don't get me wrong, he's a talented actor, and 2 Academy Award nominations. and claim that you didn't receive this one because you're black. Is that a joke? In fact, the reverse sometimes is true, as a wannabe actress named Halle Berry won an Academy Award because she was black. Go ahead. Sorry for
University
all the
philosophy.
political, I can't even apologize because we couldn't attract one liberal.
University philosophy departments have come up with the argument against what you just said because they've defined racism to be having power as well as attitude, and that way they say,
the
what do you
President of the
say to
United
that?
States has no power, the Attorney General has no power, the mayors of
But that's what they
Atlanta.
say. How do you argue against that?
Well, this is polite
That's
company,
it.
so I can't use the word.
Well, then what can we do? Because
Bullshit.
we have to be.
You just have to say that. This
Well,
is
I
bullshit.
say power is contextual. And if I'm the only
Contextual, if
male
you were
in
a
the-
police chief, I bet, if you're a police chief, you have power. If you're a policeman with a gun, you got power. If you're a criminal with a gun, you have power. There are thousands of black elected officials in this country. And people walk on eggshells around blacks. The intellectual level of the university has been plummeted down by hiring people on the basis that they're women. Not that all women are stupid, but a stupid woman will beat a very intelligent white male any day of the week in hiring. That's all privilege. And I don't know. Louis Farrakhan isn't a racist. He's just protesting black oppression. Al Sharpton isn't a racist. I mean, the desire to hang a white cop because he's white, that's Darren Wilson's only crime. That's not racism? Anyway, that's the way I would argue it. You can't be polite around stuff like that. It is ridiculous. This is ridiculous. Because they're a black racist and because you want to declare all white people are racist, that's the basic thing. They can't find a racist. It's institutional racism. What horse crap. What is institutional racism? What they don't want is to meet standards. Look, let's face it. 95% of the inventions in this world, the innovations, the science, come from probably Northern Europe and the United States. With the Chinese thrown in. That's just a reality. Face it. So how do you get there? Well, maybe, well, let me just say, this country couldn't have been created except by white Protestants. Really simple. Well, I don't know why I put in white. By Protestants. I'm a Jew. That doesn't make me feel bad. I'm very grateful to Protestants for having a personal relationship to God and therefore coming up with the idea that individuals have rights that are inalienable. It was great. Am I upset because Asians are smarter than whites? No. I mean, there's always to skin a cat. You don't have to be, a rocket scientist to, well, you would to do rocket science, but there's plenty of other things you can do. If statistical disparities, that's the way they go. If they're not a percentage of the population. Look, blacks probably have a higher percentage of bad encounters with the law because they have a higher percentage of being criminals. That's the truth. If you can't talk the truth, we're gone. And I see during the Obama years that conservative Americans who are too damn polite and too respectful of things that shouldn't be respected are finally waking up. That's my only optimism.
I wonder, do you worry about your personal security?
Yeah, my bodyguard is right there. I can't go to it. I mean, I used to just be reckless and go to campuses, but I got attacked enough times that I said, no, I'm getting older, my bones are getting brittle. Not for me. Yes.
Sir, thanks for coming. I'm a big fan. I had a question. I read the first book of your series, Black Books of the American Left. I plan on reading the other 4. You're going to have 9 or 10?
There'll be 9.
9, okay.
Originally it was supposed to, it says 10 in there, but
So 9, okay.
I condensed it, I'll put 2 together.
Could you talk about A, the left as a religion, and then B, the long march that they have succeeded in doing?
The left isn't. It's a religion. Being progressive. It has it's modeled on Christianity. We live in a fallen world, thanks to the evil corporate market system. We live in a fallen world, and there's going to be a redemption. And we're going to be the agents of the redemption, which is why they kill so many people when they get the chance. It's an unbelievable arrogance. It's intoxicating. We are going to remake the world, and it's going to be a beautiful place, and we will eliminate any obstacle in our way. I've written that volume 2 is called Progressives. And
Yeah, I have that one coming from you.
He's referring to, I was just making a bibliography of my writings over the last 25 years. And I realized that they're all about the same thing, which is the left. So I turned it into a series. It's called The Black Book of the American Left. There's a website called blackbookoftheamericanleft.com. I think the introductions to the books that have been published so far are there, reviews and so forth. And I'm gratified that there are now conservative writers who are more and more understanding this.
Hi, I've been going here for 3 years. I was in the military for 14 years, so I'm a little bit older than the average undergraduate student. One thing I noticed when I first came here is that the question that he had just brought up about philosophy is when I was taking these classes, these are questions you brought up, and it just didn't make any sense to me. It's like 2 + 2 = 5. And then, so it kind of reminded me of like 1984 thinking.
These people should not be teaching.
Yeah, and it's just insane, but and like I thought it was really important what you said earlier. I don't understand. I don't care. I'm married. My wife's got good income. My future's set. So I'll just say whatever I want, and I do. I count the teachers, I give them like going.
Can you tell us your field of study? Just
sociology. So I mean, my mind every day, I actually
Why would you go? That is one of the worst fields.
I promise, I didn't know. I was ignorant. So I mean, I deal with this daily, and it's hard. Social sciences. I feel like it's 1984. When I say things, people look at me crazy.
It is 1984 in your sociology class. Get another major.
Well, I have kids come up to me afterwards and they say, hey, I really agree with what you're thinking, but I can't believe that you're willing to say that.
Exactly.
I'm wondering, like,
this is America. I mean, when I went out and as I think I lost the thought there when I became notorious in 2001 because there was a movement for reparations. Reparations for slavery paid 137 years after the fact to people who weren't slaves or the children of slaves. And from like 80% of America is descended from immigrants who came here after slavery was abolished, let alone the fact that the United States and Britain are the 2 countries responsible for the abolition of slavery. The British had to send gunboats into Africa to end slavery. They didn't succeed in ending it because it's still there, but to stop these African kings. White people didn't run into Africa and throw nets. I mean, this was a big television series, Roots, throw nets over people. They went to a slave market and black Africans sold other black Africans to them. So that, anyways, I wrote a little book called Uncivil Wars about the reparations controversy that I stimulated. But when I spoke at Berkeley, to show you, I asked the chancellor, I said, your campus is out of control. I would like you to introduce me so there's no violence. And instead, they assigned 30 armed policemen to my event. There were guys, with the SWAT jackets. When I had to go to the bathroom before I spoke, and 6 guys preceded me and kicked open all the stall doors. This is a disgrace. It's America. This happened in 2001.
How do we get younger kids though to want to come out and go, hey, this doesn't seem right? Because these
I
are
look,
professors, they're
it's
authorities.
the emperor has no clothes story. You just tell them, when they tell you that only whites can be racist, you just tell them this is bullshit, you're a racist. Yeah, well,
Real quick, how would you advise young people looking for a career? Would you advise them to go into journalism, who are conservative?
astrophysics.
Okay, let's say they are conservatives and they are interested politically. Would you advise them to be teachers, education, journalism, poli-sci? What would
Well,
you
look, here's the thing. There is a big difference between people on the left and people on the right. Okay? People on the left are missionaries. It's a religion. So where would a modern missionary go who didn't particularly believe in God or a church? You go into missionary professions. So they go into teaching, journalism, and politics. Conservatives are actually see this as an opportunity society. They're looking at their careers. So it's a mismatch. We really are at a big disadvantage. And conservatives are also much more, well, leftists aren't principled at all out there. They lie all the time. Although I'm so embarrassed by what's going on in Republican primaries. Just character assassination. It's just terrible, all of it. Aim your fire at the enemy, please. I think conservatives would resonate if they saw a really good slash and burn attack on Hillary. You don't have to chop down the guy next to you, just show you can do it better than he can. I don't get that. When I tell parents often, I've had parents come up who've lost their children coming to these schools. You have to have you should relate to the other conservative students. There's a conservative review here, there's college Republicans. You should have outside sources, you should read conservative publications. You should ask your parents if they're conservative or your conservative friends for books to counter what you're getting. They'll make it through if they do that. And there are skills. This is, the left, they're not stupid and they're not unskilled. Some of them are extremely talented. So you can learn skills. You go into journalism here, you're going to have all leftists. I once had lunch with the dean of the journalism school at USC. And I said to him, he had been he was a left of center guy, but a good journalist. He'd been managing editor of the LA Times. I said, Michael, do you have any conservatives on your faculty? No. I said, do you think that's a good idea from the point of view of either pedagogy or training future journalists? He said, no. I said, what can you do about it? He said, nothing, because the faculty does the hiring. And they want to hire people like them. It's gone so far, so long. It's been 30 or 40 years. And you can fault conservatives for this, for not fighting. I did this campaign. I got almost no support. Almost no support. What do we have, 30 governors? You want to have a change? This thing is so lost, isn't it? But you have, all you need is the chair of the Appropriations Committee of the state, senate, or house. That's all you need. Pick up the phone, or president, and I've laid out my idea of how it can be done, and what you have to do. Well, you just say, look, I don't want to go into educational reform, it's too long. But the fact of the matter is that they are distracted by other things. I tried to sell it to the Heritage Foundation, which has got the money to do it and everything. I couldn't do it. If you look at what they say about it, it's all about budgets and stuff like that. It's not about curriculum. Because the curriculum is a minefield. So I've written about 5 books on this subject, which lay out how you might go about doing it. But anyway, you should be here to learn skills. Maybe they teach some skills in sociology, I have no idea. Political science, I mean, demographics and stuff like that, they're pretty sophisticated. I mean, look, Axelrod was brought up by, he's a communist. But he ran a successful presidential campaign by a pretty, well, let's face it, if Barack Obama wanted another privilege, if he wasn't black, he couldn't be elected dog catcher.
David, we have time for 2 more questions.
Okay, yes.
Well, I'm a leftist, so this
Good, you should, I
this probably will be
guessed
a,
from the, yeah.
this probably will be a lie then, since leftists only tell lies. I've been back on the campus as a senior citizen. We get a lot of classes for free for the last 4 years. And I don't want to respond to most of your, it was kind of like a paint splatter, your talk I thought. There were so many points, and I thought many of them were unsupported. But my problem in classes and in events that I go to on campus, sponsored by various groups, is that everyone talks to themselves. You don't find an interchange. You don't find conservative groups bringing in a conservative speaker and putting on a liberal or a radical speaker on the same platform. You don't find. Can I finish my comment?
I will tell you.
I won't go on too long. I won't go on too much longer. Can I finish, please?
You find me
Can I finish my comment?
one liberal professor who will debate me. One. And I'll come back and debate him.
Excellent. Well, could we narrow the topic so it wouldn't be as vast as your
Yeah, I
your
spoke to my
talk was?
audience.
And you'll come back at your own expense?
Yeah, I'll find a way to come back.
Excellent. I have to get your email address. But this is my problem on campus.
Well-
There's no interchange. And there's a thirst for it on this campus.
But you have to-
Could I finish, please?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
About 3 years ago, there was a debate, a pro-life versus pro-choice debate, in an auditorium on our campus, the students might know, in the Bell Museum. I went over there about 10, 15 minutes before it was to start. You couldn't get in. There was a lineup 2 blocks long. This is rare on campus. Every panel I go to on campus, where you have 3 or 4 panelists, they apologize if they happen to disagree on the slightest point. You might as well have 1 panelist on these. And I will find the professor. Now, you don't tell me that, well, they're not liberal enough for you. I will find a professor
You didn't understand.
to debate you on the topic, the title of this
You
topic.
didn't understand my problem. Every platform at this university is controlled by the left. Your problem is not with me, it's with the left. I have gone every time, I've been invited once to debate a leftist. Once. It happened to be the dean of students. I've written about it in a book called Indoctrination U. And it was at a very liberal college, but a good one, Reed.
Where was that?
Reed.
We will come up with a narrow topic, and I
You know,
guarantee you,
get
I guarantee
me-
you, I will find
There is
something.
a ton of money.
I will
here.
find something.
There is a ton of money here. You get my honorarium, you get my travel.
You already said you come for free. We got
I did,
witnesses.
but I didn't realize how beside
But we got witnesses.
I didn't realize how off the wall you are. You don't understand the context which you're in.
I understand what free means.
Pretend
And I heard it.
Pretend like you didn't say it.
I will come anyway.
I just want to say, I used to be president of the Minnesota Association of Scholars. I met Mr. Horowitz that back then the debate was politicizing of the classroom. And there really were strong academic sides. I taught here for 15 years, so this is going back about 20 years ago. But there were strong sides actually in the academy about whether or not the students should even know what your political views are. And oftentimes students would even be brave enough to say, could we get back to the subject or something like this? You know, the professors actually would act like they were embarrassed. And it wasn't uncommon to student evaluations I went to a couple of department meetings where students had actually commented about a professor's politicizing. And at this particular school, a department chair is actually a supervisor, not just a member of the union. And there actually were criticisms. That doesn't exist anymore, I'm told. That doesn't exist anymore, I'm told. But I remember even back then at the law school, which was a different ballgame, we would have people come in, and we had people studying the field of law who would come in and from the very beginning of the speech start arguing with the speaker, not even let the speaker make the points. And several times actually started chanting and that type of thing. We actually had security people. This was in the law school, and they were debating legal topics and legal subjects. And so back then, that didn't exist in the liberal arts or the business schools or the science departments, but in the law school it already existed. Now what I understand is if you look at the history of the speakers on this campus, at commencements and that type of thing, and I was a trustee at Minskill, so that's 54 campuses, okay? There are about, I think there were 7 commencement speakers out of 54 that were what I would call conservative. And there were about 20 we couldn't tell. The other 30 were basically clearly liberal, coming in with some kind of a policy. So it has swung an awfully long way. So little examples like the one you're bringing in, all respect to you. You're in it, and I'm not in the classroom any longer. But I would say it's so sweeping and so absorbent. Most of the people who used to fight these battles, David, have just decided it's a lost cause. And they've stepped out of the university environment anymore, and they're now trying to have the fight somewhere else because they consider it a lost cause.
I've spoken on 400 campuses. I've been invited twice by liberals. And one of them was somebody I knew from the 60s who I shamed and invited me. I met one genuine liberal in 7 years, or it's actually been 20 years of traveling on college campuses. And so I will come at my expense. I will raise the money to come. But you have to understand, which you don't.
You don't know
You
what I
are in a
understand.
totalitarian institution.
You don't know what I understand.
I do, from what you said. Well, I'm not going to argue with you. I'm tired. Thank you.
In the 60s, it was a wonderful saying. It was, I don't know who discovered water, but I know it wasn't the fish. And I find nowadays we swim in this stream of all the assumptions are to the left.
Well, because, like I said, where's the opposition? Where's the opposition? Why is Trump getting the support he's getting? Because he's the first one who's burst the bubble of political correctness. First one is called Hillary a hypocrite, which she is, and an abuser of women, which she is. Well, all the Republicans are afraid of taking on a woman. It's really simple, because they're on political correctness. He has made immigration. We have no border. There's no major country in the world that has no border. And even minor countries like Mexico have very strict border laws. It's a terrible security threat. There are terrorists coming in and criminals. How many criminals do you think are in this country illegally? 400,000. 400,000. And it wasn't until Trump that this became conversation. And, you know, he's got all he can do to keep the National Review boys from, wiping the, it's just
David,
terrible.
this young man had a question before
A
you
young
go.
man. Anders.
Yeah, so Minnesota Republic been trying to bring in Breitbart tech editor Mallory Novelist to debate about feminism. And we've emailed the entire gender studies department and have not been able to find somebody willing to debate. Why do you think leftists are so scared to engage in any kind of frank conversation on politics?
Many of them are. No, I mean, I think in this case, I don't know if it's fear. I mean, I don't know the person you wanted to invite. In my case, it's likely to be fear because I will go right in their face. And they know it because I'm all over the place. It's mainly the other thing. And by the way, gender studies is garbage. In gender studies, you will learn that gender is socially constructed. If you go over to your neuroscience department, they'll tell you it's hardwired, it's genetic. Now, who do you trust? But it has to do, they think they're changing the world. Why would they want to listen to the enemy? They're not academics. You have to understand, gender studies is not an academic field. Academic is when you teach people how to think. You don't tell them what to think. You present them. When I went to school, I never knew the politics of my professors, ever. I mean, I assumed that they were probably, most of them, even at that time, Democrats, maybe half. But I never knew their politics. They never brought it into the classroom. And my professors, if you took one side, they take the other. I happened to be a Marxist when I went to Columbia in the McCarthy 50s. I was never singled out for my views. My professors understood very well who I was, but they were very respectful of the teacher-student relationship. That's all gone. That's all gone. You're just going into a political beehive when you go into your classrooms. It's just terrible. I mean, I feel bad for that, except that I think that conservatives are getting sharper as a result of having to defend themselves or defend their views. All right, and a great audience.